Under certain circumstances, failing, losing, forgetting, unmaking, undoing, unbecoming, not knowing, may in fact offer more creative, more cooperative,
They're
more
silencing
surprising
Agatha's
ways of
death
being in the world.
and all the
It's a
other
beautiful
children
thing.
killed by the
Do
police
you have a
this year.
visceral reaction to that
They're
statement?
silencing the ones I care about.
Is this the sentence hard to read?
They're silencing my community.
Hard to understand?
She really wanted
They're
I think I
silencing
ought
us
to start
the
with my
same way
story.
they
make it
did
work. As
during
a
the
body
21
further
years of the
abstracted from
dictatorship.
hers, a somewhat
And
impartial
they are
observer,
being given a voice
I
by
can tell
him.
you that she really did
They're
try.
silencing Bolsonaro
Though if you were
and
to ask
Erdogan.
her, she'd say that she didn't
They're
try hard
silencing
enough,
the ones
that
who
she
don't
should have
agree.
started sooner,
They're
that someone more
silencing the
intelligent,
non-religious
talented,
and the
imaginative
non-conforming.
could have accomplished what she could
They're
only attempt.
silencing
Associated
queers and
with
women.
failure. Breakdown,
They're silencing
collapse,
the inhabitants
decline,
of the
defeat,
favelas.
definitely,
They're silencing the promising
deterioration,
cinema
loss,
production in the
misstep,
country.
botch,
They're
bungle,
silencing the
bust,
crying and the
checkmate,
despair over the
decay,
Amazon fires. They're
implosion,
silencing sexual
inadequacy,
and racial diversity
loser,
in
mess,
the bank commercial.
misadventure, non-performance,
They're
rupture,
silencing the gay kiss
stalemate, stoppage,
Listen.
washout, wreck.
Hear the
That
absence
silence
in everything
exists
you
as a
heard
framework.
before.
The
Listen
metric
again.
that you spread over
Hear the
both the
future
world
of everything you
outside,
could not
in
yet
your
hear.
body and within.
How will you call it?
It becomes a curated spectrum of necessity.
What are the words you do not
each
yet
detection
have?
valued?
What do you need to
In this
say?
instance, the
What are
flood
the
of noise
tyrannies you
coming through
swallow
the
day by day
headphones
and attempt to
acts
make your
as a
own,
surrogate
until
for
you
an
will
absence
sicken
of
and
sound
die of
and
them,
arrive
still
as a
in
blanket.
silence?
I could keep educating
the
myself,
levels and patterns
adding letters
that
to the end
exist
of my
in this
name
generated
every
for
time
fame
job
are
requirements
enough
move the
that
ghost
together they make
goalposts.
all values known and
I could
void.
earn less while I acquire a new
Your
skill
oratory
and
cortex
slowly climb the ladder
stops
of
grading
promotion until I'm back where I started, just a little bit older. So I apply for the traditional and the non-traditional courses in higher
words
education,
associated with
or
success,
allow frustrated feelings
accomplishment,
of what could have been
achievement,
had I
advance,
suffered a hostile working environment
benefit,
a little bit longer,
boom,
to be in an
fame,
industry about as
gain,
stable as the one I am in now,
happiness,
where
profit,
the only differences are measured by
progress,
safety, solitude,
prosperity,
and shame.
triumph, victory, win, ascendancy, attainment, consummation, eminence, fortune, fruition, killing it, laughter, maturation, reward, savvy, sensation, bed of roses, big hitter,
A chorus
Do
might
well.
be a place to start.
easy street,
In order for that to
Flying
work,
colours.
some privileged
Good luck.
individuals need to abdicate
Good
their
times.
roles,
happy
give up
days.
their solos, be quiet so that a multitude of other voices might fill the silence. They need to shh.
Speaker is a platform for experimental writing, conversation, and sound artwork, exploring urgent questions through a collection of voices. Thank you for joining us for tonight's double launch on the topics of silence and failure. Silence is often approached as something lacking, as a space without sound. In speaking, silence is often considered to be in opposition to voice, its mute counterpart. This edition asks, how could silence be animated as a space for resistive possibility? And how could we learn to read silence in all of its nuance? With writing from Amber Ablett, Hanja Asan, Angelica Bolotinari, Robin Everett, Moa Franzen, Haruka Foucault, Dominique Hirth, William Kudal, Nayara Lecce, Elia Messer, Domingo O'Donnell, Lena Rolfe, Kirsty Russell, Sophia Fid-Vinter, and Salome Vogelin. This edition on failure asks, who decided the boundaries of success? What language are we using to describe each other's actions and value in the world? And whose experience is being determined within the binaries of right and wrong, good and bad. With writing from Babe World, Connor Baird, Laurie Balash, Samit Bayet, Danya Burchard, Lisa Colette Bysham, Rob Carter, Kirsty Hendry, Audrey Hurd, Pedro Riva, Dolly Sen, Annika Sarah Vumilia Tenga, and Grace Tabia Tenga. Speaker is a not-for-profit project supporting artists and writers to produce new and experimental texts and sounds. All money made from the sales of books goes back into paying more artists and writers to produce new work. Thank you to all the artists, writers, and musicians for their contributions, and to Lydgalleriet, Ariel, After School Special, Beck, Bergen Kommune, and Kulturadet for their kind support.
sounding of the thought,
in the thinking of language. No. In the thinking of meaning that is created between the concept and the
capital constructed coalitions of curators. Curating the control of the understandings
by controlling the knowledge, the power plays.
the places of the thinking, the places of the understanding, the places of the in between
Me.
in between text,
Text.
text,
Text.
text,
Text. Text.
things.
Things in the text of the space between
Exploding the understandings of what you say. Saying your understandings of
saying what you mean instead of saying what you want me to think that I want to hear.
meaning what you say is the meaning of the symbols you produce.
Say what you mean.
Thoughts about thinking, about doing, about the other thing. Othering the thoughts between
othering, otherness, producing meaning in what I'm saying while I am thinking about what comes next.
the rapid misconceptions of what you produce. Producing the
context of the concepts
conceptualizing the curriculums of colored cultures of language, the movement of language, the sight of language, the thought of language, the
the spoken language. Thinking. Thinking. What voices do we hear? What voices are present in our cultural language of the lines of the culture? The lines of linear loneliness. Lying in between the complicated twists. Cohesive complications in the understanding between what is said and what is meant. Standing in the nothing, not understanding the thing. The lines are not linear. The line is unknowingly becoming entangled in the meaningless knowledge constructed between what is said and what is thought. The thinking about the thinking
about the thinking
creates thoughts
of unthought clarification.
Unthought clarifications clear up the concept of entangled mess.
They clearly
State.
loosen.
Clear. Clear. Clean.
Convert.
Clear lines.
The clear lines of messed up thoughts. The messing up of thoughts. The unraveling of the raveled.
Thinking thoughts.
Thinking thoughts in past tense. Pathological, philosophical, instrumental thinking. The instrument of thinking.
Of the instrument of thinking of the instrumental thinking of interlocked weaving webs of wires. Move.
Move. Move your thinking. Move your thinking to the other side of the brain.
Left.
To the other side of language.
Right.
To the right language.
To the right, to the left of the thinking past in a pathological. Can you hear the thoughts?
The neighbour across the way, a man with long to mod-length grey hair and glasses, is taking the scaffolding down from the facade of his house, which he has just finished painting. The house is gleaming and ready for the winter that is to follow the summer. It strikes me that the sound of the typewriter and the sound of the scaffold are one of the same. I picked up my typewriter in Oslo from a man who lived alone in an apartment and spent the day polishing an enormous round wooden dining table. There was a painting on the wall he was eager to show me, by his father, he said. 3 years ago on a residency in Rotterdam, an artist introduced me to a text by Dorothea Brand called Becoming a Writer, which I have since introduced to countless other artists and writers. The book, originally published in 1934, is essentially about learning to live with, or rather ignore, the voice in your head that insists you're no genius, so why bother writing anything at all? Instead of waiting for the magic, write every day and do not reread anything for at least a couple of weeks. It was during the residency that, following Dorothea's sound advice, I wrote what I considered to be officially my first poem. I wrote it by cutting up text on one of those tea bags that comes with a positive, life-affirming message, and it went like this. In Charleroi, Rotterdam, I walk past my local sex shop almost every day. Its towering pink dildo blown up to a comical scale on vinyl in the window. I was being encouraged to connect with the local neighborhood during my stay, and this place, next door to the shop selling fishing gear and around the corner from the dry cleaners, seemed to me to be the best and only way to do this. I was interested to know if they had any literature on sex, about love. Of course, I assumed they wouldn't have any classics, but thought of the simultaneously esoteric and everyday function of the shop at the heart or libido of the community. I imagined a small section of it repurposed temporarily as a library. I intended to publish my poems on the scrolling digital display outside the shop front. I entered the shop, letter in hand, prepared to be laughed out the door, as we say. My idea was superfluous to the needs of the shop and arguably served no function commercially or otherwise. The shop's proprietor was a woman in her 50s, dressed in black leather, and our conversation was punctuated by the smell of stale smoke, which came from an ashtray on the counter, full to the brim. To further add to my nervous state, as I tried to explain, I'm an artist who's living around the corner. A group of teenagers burst into the door and started rollicking about with various items on display. She didn't seem to mind. As if this was a regular occurrence, kids on their way home from college, and what I presumed to be a struggling business was probably grateful for any custom, however boisterous. I left the sex shop clutching a small piece of blue paper with the shop's name and address stamped on it. No email, apparently. The idea remains unrealized to this day. I first used letterpress printing in Guadalajara in the spring of 2017. I thought that it would be a cool time of year to visit Mexico, but it turned out to be in the dry period, so it was both very hot and very dusty. It took me 3 weeks to find an outdoor pool. I spent an incredibly lonely month in Guadalajara, living in an empty apartment with my own thoughts for company and a grand piano full of concrete. I walked and walked in the dry heat. I clung to the shade, drank beer in the evening and smoked cigarettes. Occasionally the cleaner would visit. At night, I lay spread out over the bed sheets with the window open, listening to the traffic. It was hopeless. I missed my Em at the time desperately. I had to make some new friends. So I did. Santino, my neighbor, a Mexican architect turned artist, and Lucia, the lady at the market selling pinch pots. Her name in Latin, she tells me, means light. Santino told me of an independent publishing house called Impromptu. It was there that I met the grandson of the legendary Mexican mural painter, Jose Clemente Orozco. Born in 1883, Orozco has enormous murals all over Mexico, in museums and public spaces. At Impromptu, I took part in a letterpress workshop with his grandson, a very talented artist and illustrator in his own right. Jose would help to set my plastic Pulpo People poem and mix the purple ink with which it was printed. This time, I would publish my work at the local seafood bar Pariente, distributing letterpress printed poems for free in the menu to unsuspecting diners. I felt pretty miserable last night before I sat down with a warm bowl of noodles. Noodles cooked in coconut milk and turmeric. Alexi Sale's imaginary sandwich bar on the radio. After dinner, I start writing down a few things before I forget. Firstly, a book my sister bought me years ago for Christmas that's currently in the attic at my mum's house. The book in question was, and still is, called The Logic of Castles by Enrique Villamatas. It's been a good few years since I read it, but from what I recall, the book documents the author's internal struggle when invited to take part in Manifesta Art Festival as a writer in residence. Stationed in a Chinese restaurant, uncomfortably on show, the writer's character in the book struggles with the very public performance of a very private act. I suppose in a way the author felt a bit like a character in a play when he took up this offer, and so it makes sense to present the story as fiction. The novel takes a surreal turn towards the end, the protagonist escaping the restaurant and retreating instead to a nearby forest. It was a superb read, a really bang-on present from my sister. The only part of the book which I struggled with was a review of an exhibition the writer witnesses during his residency. An exhibition by Ryan Gander, who'd emptied a museum so there really wasn't much to see, but you know, the wind was whistling through the space, that sort of thing. I was surprised the author fell for this trick, but let's give Ryan the benefit of my doubt and say you just had to be there. The logic of Castle brings to mind something I read online about artists straying into the territory of writing fiction. Whether there is any truth in these generalizations is unclear, but something about Villamatas' book suggests there is. Although, come to think of it, Villamatas is a writer straying into the field of contemporary art. Now briefly back to my mum's attic. Back to the attic where all my books sit doing nothing, in storage indefinitely. There's a Seinfeld episode Jerry opens by talking about the books people have on display in their homes on shelves, like trophies. How many of those are you actually going to reread, he exclaims. Writers often draw on the cliche of books being That's not how I would describe mine. But I can see now how the books became a retreat into someone else's reality. Take a biography, for example. More specifically, take the biography of Ettore Sottsass by Dejan Sujic. Sottsass was a post-war Italian designer, perhaps best known for his iconic red Olivetti Valentine typewriter. Cross-checking Sottsass's journal with real events, Sujic discovers many inconsistencies, concluding that he was willfully fabricating moments in his own life. I used to think I could learn everything I needed to know about life and everything about making art through books, just through reading about it. Oblivious to the notion that making was different to reading and to an extent writing. Sitting and writing is thinking, but it is not making. And it does not require much movement of the body. Put a warm jumper on, get a cup of coffee and be still. Write a page or two and then go for a walk. Empty your mind. Do something else with the rest of your day. Be lazy. Let the thoughts come to you, not the other way around. It's a different kind of work. Sounds nice though, doesn't it? I expressed my concern to fellow students in order to gauge their reaction. What if I become one of those self-confessed failed artists turned writers, like Jan Verwoerd or Chris Kraus? Will the last 10 years have been in vain? One student over a lunch of pale broccoli soup and pesto on bread reassured me that I am an artist. I just make art about writing. I spoke to Adria, fittingly in the library, about art and writing, that I don't know if the art can live up to the promise of my text. If it's erased, then art just got overtook. It's panting heavily and on the verge of giving up. I describe making as the colour yellow and writing as blue. And I have to be either yellow or blue. Green does not exist. Adria suggests that I work with this struggle, use it as material, or words to that effect.
secret to success is in the S's. The 7 essential principles to success in business. Values, vision, mission, purpose, goals. There are 7 essential principles that you must practice as an entrepreneur throughout your business life if you are to achieve maximum success. They have been taught and repeated in thousands of books and articles over the years, and here they are. Clarity. You must be absolutely clear on who you are and what you want. You need written goals and plans for every part of your life. As Zig Ziglar would say, you must become a meaningful specific rather than a wandering generality. Begin with your values. What do you believe in and stand for? What is most important to you in life? What would you pay for, fight for, suffer for, and die for? What do you really care about? Someone once wrote to someone else, until you know exactly what you would do if you had only 1 hour left to live, you are not prepared to live. What is your vision for yourself and your future? What is your vision for your family and your finances? What is your vision for your career and your company? Someone else wrote to someone once, even if you're starting your business on the kitchen table, you must have a vision of becoming a world leader in your field, or you will probably never be successful. What is your mission for your business? What is it that you want to accomplish for your customers? What is it that you want to improve in the lives and work of the people you intend to serve with your products and services? What is your purpose for your life and your business? Why do you get up in the morning? What is your reason for being? And here's a great question. What do you really want to do with your life? And after every great question comes some more great questions. What are your goals? What do you want to accomplish in your financial life? What are your family goals? What are your family values? What are your health goals? What difference do you want to make in the lives of others? And here's the best question, maybe better than a really great question. What would you dare to dream if you knew you could not fail? When you find the answer to this great question, write it down on the back of your hand so you will be reminded of it each and every time that you wipe your eyes. To be truly successful and happy, you must be very good at what you do. You must resolve to join the top 10% in your field. You must make excellent performance of the business task your primary goal, and then dedicate all your energies to doing quality work and offering quality products and services. What are your constraints? What holds you back? What sets the speed at which you achieve your goals? And what one thing could you do immediately to begin alleviating your main constraint? This is often the key to rapid progress. The essence of successful business is innovation. This is the ability to find faster, better, cheaper, easier ways to produce and deliver your products and services. The most fortunate part of this advice is that almost everyone is a genius. You have more abilities and intelligence than you could ever use. Your job is to unleash this creativity and focus it like a laser beam, removing obstacles, solving problems, and achieving your goals. The essence of creativity is contained in your ability to solve the inevitable problems and difficulties of business life. Leadership is the ability to solve problems. Success is the ability to solve problems. And remember, a goal unachieved is merely a problem unsolved. The greater clarity you have regarding each of these issues, values, vision, mission, purpose, goals, the greater the probability is that you will accomplish something wonderful with your life.
Yeah? Hi. Welcome to the Almost. Shit, that felt intense. Sorry. Just really wanted to do that. This is the Almost. It is a space defined by what I could have said. It is a space defined by what I might have written. It is a space defined by what I wanted to express. It is words, thoughts, ideas, manifested in the Almost. I wrote this text after I tried to adapt a performance proposal to the restrictions of this year. And I tried really hard to get there, and the deadline was just coming closer and closer and closer. And I tried and tried and tried. And eventually I sent something away. And the moment I sent it away, I realized how what I sent away really should have stayed in the archives of my computer. And I started feeling like this, like this lingering presence of failure and like shame. And when you have like the heat rushes and you walk around and you like try to shake your head to just get rid of the memory. And while I was there, I was looking back, and all of a sudden I discovered the cartography of the Almost. The Almost is a space one crosses when transiting to success. Stopping along the way on any point for a specific amount of time is considered failure. Failure, the Almost, and the point of success are tangible imaginaries of daydream that have been validated by sociocultural narratives. They are a recollection of thoughts, of imaginations that lead to action. Imagination augments the value of reality. Imagination leads to action. The Almost and failure can be understood as territorial spaces of transit whose impact and reality is based on the immaterial constructions of daydreams and thoughts. It is in the speculative fictions of success where failure arises. It is success or failure. If there are two opposites, it is one or the other. Success is a very specific point, with a very specific location. Its form can change, but its characteristics are marked by its inherent singularity. Failure, on the other side, is not. Failure is between the I anchored in the now and the specific point of success, usually ubicated in the future. Failure is everything between the I and the now and the specific point of success. Failure is everything that is not success. Failure is everything that is almost. While success is a locatable point, failure has its own cartography. It is marked by both time and space. It can be found between the now of the I and the mathematically determinable variables of the point of success. This space, this transit zone towards success that inhabits the failure, is called the almost. The almost is defined by its origin, the passing now of the I. It is also defined by a very specific variable of the point of success laying in the future. The specific variable of success defining the almost can change while transitioning through it. Adaptations of the point of success, however, tend to overlap into the almost or gradually move within the anti-gravity sphere surrounding the point of success. Positive adaptations of the point of success, meaning those whose value is similar or higher to the originally calculated point of success, lay within this anti-gravity sphere. The anti-gravity sphere of the point of success is that area that potentializes the I in the now of success through the level of trust, creativity, privilege of confidence, and the confluence of the forces surrounding the point of success. The positive recalculation of the point of success is therefore only possible once the I in the now has already entered the overlapping space of the almost and the sphere of the point of success. Recalculations of the point of success while still transiting through the almost encounter specific complications that lie in the characteristics of the space. Increased perception of gravity, deceleration of thought, within an acceleration of time and action modify the possible performance of the I in the now changing, to limited version. This affects the recalibration of the point of success. Rather, a fixation of the originally determined point of success appears. This fixation is linked to the past now of the I. These recalibrations of the point of success that are based on the overlay of the almost and the sphere of the point of success are named compromise. Compromise are those points of success whose recalculation has been affected by the characteristics of the almost. The almost is a reclusive space, usually visited in solidarity by the I in the now. It, however, is a space that can be crossed simultaneously by various I's that share the now in a specific time and place. These I's might be perceived as a kind of community that follows a similar variable of the point of success. Under this circumstance, the singularity of the spaces is blurry as we encounter a coexistence of several almosts, several points of success, and several I's that started in several nows. The personal almost is defined by the specific calculation of each I in the now. The several calculations of I's form a conglomerate of shared or similar points of success and similar points of now. Therefore, coming to a coexistence of the personal almost and the shared almost, of two transit spaces whose clear borders can potentially merge temporarily into one. The collaborative union of these different I's that share the now can be defined by different energies that mark the impact and the materiality of the almost. The collaborative I's that share the now tend to cross the almost with the potential to limit the impact of the complications that might arise in the almost. The second possibility of crossing the almost is in competition. Here the threatening characteristics of the almost might increase. An unusual acceleration of time inside the transit zone of the almost, however, is one of the most common heightened effects that affect these I's that share the now in competition. The point of success in competition many times can be found in its most accurate and fixated state. Similar conditions count for the point of potential failure in competition. Competition and collaboration of I's that share the now while transiting the almost sometimes can hardly be determined. Fusions combining both competitive I's that share the now with collaborative I's that share the now can further merge into hybrid versions of the almost. The almost, experienced by all eyes that share the now, underline the complexity of the cartography of this transit zone. Failure, the experience of disorientation due to missing the point of success, is lived through both individually and collectively inside the space. The almost as a space is socially avoided as a gray zone and best described as a spatially pulsating, meaning an increasing and decreasing zone of transit. The almost space is almost a space. It is not a non-space, but in its consistency similarly ephemeral and repudiated. Its immaterial existence might be best compared to the effect of the blinding grayness of brightly lightened, cloudy skies on the eyes of any passing eye in any given now. This color of the almost affects positively the increase of thought swirls and the decrease of mobility and motion of the eye in any given now. The almost has a subtle presence that disappears once the point of success has been reached. In case of approaching failure, its subtle presence can be compared to the presence of the sound of a tinnitus, a sound that intensifies the now of the eye at any given moment. There is a sphere of absence separating the I from the now. This sphere of absence of the I surrounding the now is impacted by the external forces of the almost, such as hope, creativity, trust, and privilege of confidence if the given external forces are saturated by the potential point of success, or doubt, guilt, judgment, and shame if the forces are linked to the potential appearance of failure. While hope, creativity, trust, and the privilege of confidence accelerate the transiting tempo of the I in the now, while passing the almost, doubt, guilt, judgment, and shame have a decelerating effect on the velocity of the movement. Only when the moment of failure has been reached, the almost becomes undeniable, inherent to the now. With the occurrence of the failure, the backwards-oriented future memory of the unreachable variable point of success appears and increases the visibility and immediacy of the almost. Now, the almost turns from being a zone of transition into a space marked by its opacity, heightened gravity, and blinding grayness. It leaves its subtle present existence turning temporarily into an omnipresent and immaterial authority affecting the I. After failure, the almost can be traced from the now of the failure backwards to the original now of the I. Here, its cartography becomes visible. The I immersed by the now of failure tends to search for the quickest way to leave the given point of failure, and with it, the almost. Due to the lingering presence of the unyielding insistence of the backwards-oriented memory of failure on the I, even on the highest form of neglection and dissociation from failure and the almost have shown to be only temporary and ineffective. It is instead recommended to accept the occurrence of failure as an inherent part of the cartography of the almost, created by the I and several passing nows. It has been proven as beneficial to the I to understand failure as a given point only existing due to the linearity proposed by the fictive variable of a calculated point of success. The point of success is a point that defines the now of the I, a point that defines retrospectively the now of the I, a point that defines the I in the now, a point that proposes a certain linearity of time, space, and action for the I in the now, a point that proposes a certain linearity of time, space, and action for the now of the I, a point that is best defined as fictive future memory of the passing present of any given I in any given now. Now, point of success and failure are inevitably part of the same cartography, the cartography of the almost.
secret to success is in the S's. The 7 essential principles to success in business. Values, vision, mission, purpose, goals. There are 7 essential principles that you must practice as an entrepreneur throughout your business life if you are to achieve maximum success. They have been taught and repeated in thousands of books and articles over the years, and here they are. Clarity. You must be absolutely clear on who you are and what you want. You need written goals and plans for every part of your life. As Zig Ziglar would say, you must become a meaningful specific rather than a wandering generality. Begin with your values. What do you believe in and stand for?
What are the words you do not yet have? What do you need to say? What are the tyrannies you swallow day by day in attempt to make your own, until you will sicken and die of them, still in silence? And of course I am afraid, because the transformation of silence into language and action is an act of self-revelation, and that always seems fraught with danger. But my daughter, when I told her of our topic and my difficulty with it, said, "Tell them about how you're never really a whole person if you remain silent, because there's always that one little piece inside you that wants to be spoken out, and if you keep ignoring it, it gets madder and madder and hotter, and if you don't speak it out, one day it will just up and punch you in the mouth from inside." In the cause of silence, each of us draws the face of her own fear. Fear of contempt, of censor, of some judgment or recognition, of challenge, of annihilation, but most of all, I think, we fear the visibility without which we cannot truly live. Audelot's text speaks from the particular perspective of an African-American woman, who, as she suggests, is at once very visible through the depersonalization of racism as a threat, as the other, and not visible enough as herself in her contingent subjectivity and actions. But she does not claim this fear of visibility for herself or for her race alone, but sees it prevalent more generally and without separation as a fear of being invisible as a woman, who, as she suggests, and I quote, "all share a war against the tyrannies of silence," end of quote. It is the fear of being distorted, misseen, misrepresented, misunderstood, as well as the fear of contempt, criticism, and hate that her visibility might provoke, that silences her. It is this fear of being visible through distorted reflections, she suggests, that make her afraid to become visible. I read this woman not as a physiological binary sex, but as Helen Zixu's woman that is inclusive of a general marginality, a femininity. Zixu suggests, when I say woman, I'm speaking of woman in her inevitable struggle against conventional man. End of quote. Woman, in Zixu's sense, is what is not grasped in discourse and what remains untheorized, and as it is what has no part in the reality of the philosophical and the political real without being an essentialized other. She is silence. Woman is the marginal whose own silence sounds her fear of recognition within a depersonalized category of the other, not white man, and is silence her fear of recognition outside those terms in the contempt and criticism of not being that enough. It is that fear that makes her mute and chokes her. And it is through her own language and through speaking, singing, writing and making noise that she can break the silence and make herself visible by celebrating, naming, singing her distortions as the power of her own form vis-à-vis a normative expectation. The power to become in the freedom of an invisible voice, visible as herself.
Monte Al-Sudina. The wind tears the tent from our fists as we pin it down with rocks and boots and horses, who hang around, noses dipping as if drilling us for oil. We speak mostly in silence, words whipped from our mouths. It is 4:30 and hot, yet there is nothing to do but climb inside and fasten the doors. Even then, the wind batters our backbones like pulses in a jar. And when you release the sip for a breath in the swelling heat, I see a horse flung off the mountain as if it is made of tin. In the morning, everything is still, as though waiting. We pretend this does not make us more afraid. We shake the dust off everything and turn ourselves inside out and flap about like two old wives doing the linen. We do not speak of the clouds. Sarah Jackson, Pelt.
The girl went to the lavatory, where she could be alone, for she felt quite shaken. She examined herself mechanically in the mirror above her filthy hand basin that was badly cracked and full of hair. The image of her own existence. The dark, tarnished mirror scarcely reflected any image. Perhaps her physical existence had vanished. When she was a little girl, her aunt, in order to frighten her, insisted that the vampire, the one that sucks human blood by biting its victims in the flesh of the neck, casts no reflection in the mirror. She reckoned that it might not be such a bad thing being a vampire.
Fable for tomorrow.
For the blood would add.
There was once a town in the heart of America where all life seemed to live in harmony with its surroundings. The town lay in the midst of a checkerboard of prosperous farms, with fields of grain and hillsides of orchards, where, in spring, white clouds of bloom drifted above the green fields. In autumn, oak and maple and birch set up a blaze of colour that flamed and flickered across a backdrop of pines. Then foxes barked in the hills and deer silently crossed the fields, half hidden in the mists of autumn mornings. Along the roads, laurel, viburnum and alder, great ferns and wildflowers delighted the traveller's eye through much of the year. Even in winter, the roadsides were places of beauty, where countless birds came to feed on the berries and on the seed heads of the dried weeds rising above the snow. The countryside was in fact famous for the abundance and variety of its bird life, and when the flood of migrants was pouring through in spring,
to invisible
and
diamond
autumn people
shafts,
travelled from great
hearing
distances to
fails,
observe them.
full of long ago
Others came to
thunder.
fish the streams which flowed clear and
Sight
cold
grows
out of the
dim,
hills and
my
contained
power,
shady pools
to
where
invisible
trout
diamond
lay.
shafts.
So it had
Hearing
been from the
fails,
days many years ago,
full of long
when
ago
the first
thunder,
settlers raised
and the
their
breath
houses,
of my father's
sank their
house.
wells and built their barns.
Tough knots of muscles
Then a
sang,
strange blight crept
like
over
great
the area
oxen on
and
the
everything
plough
began
field.
to change.
And behind my
Some evil
shoulders at
spell
night,
had
no
settled
longer
on the
shining two
community.
wings.
Mysterious malady swept the
I'm a
flocks of
candle
chickens.
burnt out at the
Cattle and
feast.
sheep sickened and
Gather my
died.
wax up
Everywhere
at
was a
dawn.
shadow of death.
And this page will tell you
The farmers spoke of much illness
how to
among their
weep
families.
and
In
where
the
to be
town, the
proud.
doctors had become more and more
How to
puzzled by
distribute
new
the
kinds
final
of sickness
third
appearing among
of
their
delight and
patients.
make an easy death.
There had been several
Then
sudden and
sheltered by some
unexplained
chance
deaths,
roof,
not only among adults,
to
but even
blaze,
among children,
word
who would be
light,
stricken suddenly
this
while
posthumous
playing and
light.
dying within a few hours.
Arseny
There was a
Bukowski.
strange stillness. The birds, for example, where had they
Translated
gone?
by Kitty Hunter
Many
Blair.
people spoke of them, puzzled and disturbed. The feeding stations in the backyards were deserted. The few birds seen anywhere were moribund. They trembled violently and could not fly. It was a spring without voices. On the mornings that had once throbbed with the dawn chorus of robins, catbirds, doves, jays, wrens, and scores of other bird voices, there was now no sound. Only silence lay over the fields and woods and marsh. On the farms the hens brooded, but no chicks hatched. The farmers complained that they were unable to raise any pigs. The litters were small and the young survived only a few days. The apple trees were coming into bloom, but no bees droned among the blossoms, so there was no pollination and there would be no fruit. The roadsides, once so attractive, were now lined with brown and withered vegetation as though swept by fire. These too were silent, deserted by all living things. Even the streams were now lifeless. Anglers no longer visited them, for all the fish had died. In the gutters under the eaves and between the shingles of the roofs, a white granular powder still showed a few patches, some weeks before it had fallen like snow upon the roofs and the lawns, the fields and streams. No witchcraft, no enemy action had silenced the rebirth of new life in this stricken world. The people had done it themselves. This town does not actually exist, but it might easily have 1,000 counterparts in America or elsewhere in the world. I know of no community that has experienced all the misfortunes I describe, yet every one of these disasters has actually happened somewhere, and many real communities have already suffered a substantial number of them. A grim spectre has crept upon us almost unnoticed, and this imagined tragedy may easily become a stark reality. We shall know. Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, 1962.
This monstrous form is the audible. It is an invisible form that we do not know, and therefore, while we might hear, do not understand. And it heralds the outcome of the story and the future of the girl who cries the spectres the hour of the star, foretelling her existence in the image of a cracked mirror, casting no reflection, but producing a monstrous form. Just like the girl's appearance, sound's appearance too is monstrous, vampiric. It casts no reflection in the laboratory mirror, but distorts and changes how we see the world, and how we are seen too. She reckoned that it might not be such a bad thing being a vampire, for the blood would add a touch of pink to her swallow complexion. And sound too would add a touch of pink to the whitewashed walls, using its force of invisibility to change how we see. Sound's voice is invisible, it has no reflection. Instead, it creates a visibility that is not complementary and fulfilling of a visual expectation, but creative of a different way and a different view. It creates from silence its own emergence as noise. In the spectre's story, the lack of reflection, the blood, the vampiric distortions of the girl are her emergence and her entry into the world. It is a moment of silence that gathers up an image of the unseen and creates a preparatory space for its unfolding. In writing is a silent space of producing a different sound. To call yourself, to gain a voice. This silence is not a space left by sound or the opposite of noise. Instead, it is the space at the basis of all sound and containing their potential and possibility. It is the basic chowder from which sound emerges and which all sounds always still contain, as the source of its possibility and as the reminder of its emergence. And it is the invisible place within which we meet ourselves and each other, where I can hear you breathe and where I hear myself, breathing, humming, murmuring, being. Thus it is where we come to appreciate the fragility of our position and begin to dare to listen to ourselves, to lose the fear of misrepresentation and critique, and come out and speak. Therefore, this silence is the condition of a beginning to speak. It is movement into sounding. It is the space where monsters start to sound. Out of tiny sounds were produced the monstrous as the vampiric. that finds no reflection in the visible, masculine world, but that, in Donna Haraway's sense, creates new patterns that interfere with givens, expectations, and norms. This invisible monster of quiet sounds is not fixed indifference, but showing its effects. It is, to quote Haraway, tropically, for the promises of monsters. The first invites the illusion of essential fixed position, while the second trains us to a more subtle vision. End of quote. Providing another optics to consider the other without looking for a proper reflection, for the same, reproduced, but to embrace what Haraway terms unexpected others. And here there sounds as a new emergent language. And so this more subtle vision sees the girl emerging, gaining with
part
a
of it is the
distorted
artistic
nose and
labor,
rosy cheeks,
doing
the
it,
self-assertion
managing
and the
all
voice
the
of her
moving
own
parts
image
to get
that
together the
queers
muted
visual
performance,
norms.
and hearing, seeing, witnessing, feeling what it does. Muting requires tedious negotiation with anxious performers. The conductor will have trouble conducting when unable to hear feedback from the ensemble. When lion dancers can't hear the rhythm, they need to come up with a new definition of what it means to perform with sufficient energy. If Cajun silence is idealistic in its reliance on and its trust of the frame, then muteness is pragmatic in trusting the experiment and the process to produce surprising results. Who knew an orchestra of muted strings vis-à-vis the orchestra of Tchaikovsky? Muted Situation 22, muted Tchaikovsky's Fifth. Would sound like the sea. With the Muted Situation series, you just don't know until you start workshopping the pieces with the performers. The score isn't this perfect thing where the work is. The work is in the process and in the result of the process, which includes also all the different ways that it exceeds and falls short of the vision outlined in the blueprint. Excerpt from an interview with Samson Young, published in Real Music, London König Books, 2019. Evening. With dead hero forms, moon you are filling the silent forests. Crescent moon, with the gentle embrace of lovers, the shades of a famous age, the mouldering rocks all around. So bluish it shines towards the town, where cold and evil a gender dwells in decline. Grooming a dark future for the white descendants, you shadows moon-tangled, sighing in the crystal void of the mountain lake.
Silence is a strange environment in which we lose our orientation.
With dead hero forms, moon you're filling the silent forest. Crescent moons with the gentle embrace
but according
of
to Ahmed,
the shades of famous age, the modern rocks all around.
It is getting to
So
new
bluish it
ideas and a new
shines
audition, a
towards
new
the
orientation,
where
and
cold and
sense
evil,
of
the
ourselves
gender dwells
as a
in decline.
reorienting
Grooming a dark
ourselves in the
future
world.
for the white descendant,
Silence provides us
whose
with the
shadow moon
possibility,
tangled,
and
sighing
listening
in
to
the
silence is
crystal
a
void
listening to that
of the
which we do
mountain
not
lake.
normally face, is a mode
George
of reorientation
to the
of our
silence.
bodies in the world, to turn another way. To practice a queer listening for what we do not know is there. Not to expect to recognize it, no, but to engage in the world, to hear the others speak in their own voice. It provides the possibility of re-inhabiting our own bodies differently, and to find different relationships with human and non-human things. Therefore, this is a call to face another way, to give our body a different orientation, to hear silence. And we do not have
What
to call
visibility do you
back
fear?
into the language and lexicon of a
Do you feel
normalized
reflected
orientation,
in the design of the
but can
world?
work towards an understanding of
Or are you a
in
vampire,
its silence.
monstrous, unrepresentable, and unheard? What are the words you did not have? What would you have liked to say? Does your silence contain the urge to speak, to call yourself? Or does your silence resist, persist, fight to keep a monstrous form without a name. Who am I silencing?
Amen.